Hey everyone. I like to jump on a few minutes early just to make sure that everyone gets a chance to pop on. So tonight we are going to be talking about selling your home, listing your home, all the questions that many people have about the process and what it looks like to be in the before stage and the during stage. Most of the questions come about in the before stage, which should be a good thing that you're asking questions before you're actually on the market. So we will just wait a couple more minutes. I don't know. I'm just going to shut that door. All right. Just another minute before we get started. Just a quick reminder that if you've got questions, because I am on a live stream, you should be able to type your questions in the comments, and I should be able to see them on my screen in the back end here. So if you have a question, please type it in the comments and I will answer them. If for whatever reason I do not see that, I will make sure to reply in the comments below. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to break this into, like I said, the before stage and then the during stage, because there's different things that you need to know at different stages. So we will start to go through those questions. I think the biggest question right now is now a good time to sell? And I believe that if you're ready to sell, if you are in a position to want to get on the market, I always say that is the best time, because you don't want to miss out on potential buyers. And you never know when that perfect buyer is going to be out there on the lookout for potentially your home. So the one thing that seems to be a reoccurring conversation as of the last couple of weeks is the fact that everybody seems to just be holding off until like March, April, because they think it's a better market in the spring, so they're just going to wait. I have to disagree with that statement. I believe that if you're ready, you should get on the market now. And the reason why I believe that is because everybody is waiting to list their home in the spring market. When the spring market hits and the floodgates open, everybody and your neighbor is going to list their house, which floods the market with options for the buyer. Therefore, the buyers have tons of opportunities and options to choose from, which means this gives the buyer more power to negotiate. When there is an excess number of homes for sale and a limited number of buyers, that means the ball is usually in the buyer's court. Now, I will mention that different regions in different areas all have their own individual market. So if you're looking at Northumberland as a whole, and you say, or maybe the months of inventory, for example, is 7, which is high, which would say this is a buyer's market. But there are pockets within Northumberland, like Trent Hills, for example. And so you could look at Northumberland's stats and see that their months of inventory is 7. But when you look at Trent Hills, it could be 4.5, which actually is a balanced market. So you have to be knowledgeable and educated on the certain things when it comes to trying to decide whether it's a good time to sell. Like I said, a lot of times the spring market, your house, the price of your home gets diluted because there's just so many houses to choose from. It usually brings down the prices of the homes because of that sole reason, is because there's so many houses to choose from. So in my opinion, if you're ready to sell now, there's always buyers out there. There's always people getting married, getting their very first pre-approvals. There's people always getting divorced. So they're always usually having to sell the matrimonial home and go and buy their own homes. There's so many different scenarios out there, but there's always buyers out there looking to purchase a home. So that is one of the questions that I get a lot. Is now a good time? Again, though, it is very case by case basis. If you have a certain situation, I'd have to understand that situation to be able to say, if you bought it last year for 500 and right now it's worth 480, you don't really have to sell. Then I would say, no, now is not the right time to sell. Because you want to be able to sell and make money when you sell your house, right? So you want to be able to sell when you have equity in your home. So that may not be an situation in terms of like, when is it a good time to sell? So another question that I get is, what is happening with prices right now? Prices are starting to correct. The inflated COVID unrealistic market has come to an end. And I think even though we're almost 6 years, however many years it took for COVID, but like a year or two or whatever. So even though we're a few years post COVID, people still have in their mind that because their neighbor sold 3 years ago for X amount, they think that they could also get the same. That is not the case. And when it comes to pricing your home, I guess I'll jump into the question of, how do you determine the list price of my home? There's a couple of different factors. One of them is what has sold recently that is similar to your home. Generally speaking, there's never going to be a carbon copy of your home. There are some subdivision homes and homes that are very similar that will be good comparables for you, because if they've sold recently and yours is very similar, then it helps to build that foundation for you to figure out where is the baseline for the price point. But if you're a very unique home and maybe you have some acreage and maybe you have a pool and a garage, and not a lot of homes with acreage and a pool and a garage in your specific area have sold recently, it's going to be a little bit harder to kind of come up with a price that is based on facts and statistics. Sometimes you just have to go off of what you feel is right. And then once you're on the market, you assess based on the activity that happens and the showings and the feedback and stuff like that. One thing I will say is, not only do you want to look at the homes that have sold in your area, but you also, one of the most important parts is, what homes are for sale right now in my neighborhood? And how do we compare? How do we match up to the houses that are currently in the race? And how will our home fit in that equation? So a good thing to do that I recommend sellers do is to, prior to going on market, start looking at the different comparable homes and actually go and look at a few of them so that you can actually have an in-person experience in those homes, so you can do a visual comparison of your home to their home. Because if the house 3 doors down is similar to yours, maybe not exactly, but you think your house is worth more, but then when you go and you visit the property and you actually physically walk through the home, you could potentially realize that, wow, this is actually a really nice home. It's actually much bigger than ours. They've done a significant amount of maybe updates. They have a pool, we don't. They have a double garage, we don't. So you have to start looking at those things, and that's how you start to compare your home to theirs. And you also want to look at the days on market. Because if your neighbor 3 doors down has been on the market for, say, 60, 90 plus days at this price point, then that's not the price that they're going to sell at, because they haven't sold for 60, 90 days, whatever. So chances are they're going to sell below that price point. And so when you're doing those comparisons, and you're getting ready to go on the market, if you position yourself where they should be, and maybe you feel as though you're similar homes, but you position yourself down here where it's more realistic, chances are when people are going to see this home, they're also going to see your home. And then chances are your house is going to be the better bang for your buck. So you will sell faster. That's usually a really good way of doing it, is just to analyze the homes that have been on the market for a little while. I even go as far as calling the agent. I don't tell them up front, like, I'm calling because I have a house 3 doors down that are thinking about selling. I usually just call and I just say, hey, I'm just wondering about the activity on the house. Have you had lots of showings? So on and so forth. Maybe at the end of that conversation, I will bring up, I do have a property in the neighborhood that they're thinking of selling. And I just wanted to get a feel for what's going on in the market and what's going on with your listing. So oftentimes that is a very helpful thing to do. So what happens if I price too high just to test the market? I highly recommend that you not do that. This is the one element to listing your home that costs sellers the most money. Because when you are not motivated and you just want to test the market, that is actually like not doing good things for your home. I always give the analogy of the banana, where fresh on the market, brand new, ripe banana on the shelf, lots of people are grabbing them and off the shelf. And then, but what you do when you're overpriced is it's great when you're the new banana on the shelf, but when you're overpriced and you sit on the shelf and you sit on the shelf, and then you start to go brown, and then you start to bruise and go even more brown. And then eventually you're a rotten banana that nobody picks up off the shelf. And that's what happens when you price your house too high. Another thing that you have to consider is when you price your house too high, excuse me, you are not doing yourself any favors. There was a point that I was going to make there, and I've lost track of what I was going to say about the rotten bananas. But essentially, you become the rotten banana that nobody wants. This is what I was going to say. So when a prospective buyer is looking at your home, the first thing, I would say 9.5 times out of 10, the first thing that people think of is, wow, that looks like a really beautiful home. I wonder what's wrong with it. That is the human instinct. That is what is natural for people to believe, is that there is something wrong with the house, not the price, which is usually the problem. They don't think, oh, they must just have high expectations. No, people think automatically that there's something wrong with the house. And so if you have this long waited out process because you're just not motivated and you don't actually need to sell, but you're just testing the market, that history of your home on the market follows your home. And so whether you list with me or another agent or 5 different agents, all of that history goes along with your address. So as a realtor, this listing could be brand new on the market. And so when I'm looking at it, I look at the history. I always look at the history of the home. So I look at, oh, it's a new listing with a new agent, but they were listed also in October. Oh, and they were also listed in August. So then that usually triggers me to think there's either something wrong or it's the price. And so generally speaking, that actually gives me leverage thinking that, okay, so these people are unrealistic. Maybe at this point, they really do want to sell their house because they've been trying for like several months on and off. And maybe now they're ready to sell. So you don't want to play that game. If you feel like, let's just test it out, let's just see, don't do it. It's going to hurt you. It's not going to help you. And when you're ready and motivated to sell, that is when I believe that you should go on the market. Okay, so in regards to preparing the house and like getting things ready, I call this the list ready process. A lot of times people usually come to me after. If you're a home seller and you're thinking about selling the house, but you're going to do a bunch of things before you call any realtor because, you want them to see it in better shape, have the realtor come in before you start doing those things. Because oftentimes I get called on to a listing appointment and they've just spent the last 6 months painting and putting new flooring in and doing a bunch of different things. And oftentimes it's like, you probably could have gotten away with not doing that. Or they've taken out the old carpet and put in new carpet. And it's, you know what? Someone could very well buy this and want to put hardwood in. You could have potentially just wasted thousands of dollars on flooring because it may not be what the person buying your house wants. So I would highly recommend that you do get an agent to come in before you even start thinking about doing things, so that they can guide you in the right direction as to what is going to give you the highest ROI, return on your investment. Because if you have decent colors throughout your house, but you think that maybe you need to have a couple accent walls and the color needs to pop a little bit more, don't do it until you have a realtor or a home designer tell you what the right things to do are, because I don't want you wasting money on things that aren't going to put that money back into your pocket plus. So what repairs or updates are actually worth doing before listing? These are things that you probably maybe don't even think are necessary, but decluttering, cleaning, getting a storage unit and start taking things out of your home to thin the stuff out. Those are probably the 3 most important things, because people can see past stuff, but you need to air it out a little bit so that they can picture their life and their things in the home. Big renovations, like if you're considering like, maybe we need to redo the whole kitchen, or maybe we need to put all new windows in the house. Now, if all of the windows are original from 1956, then, and they're all like, all of the seals are broken and those kinds of things, and you're losing a bunch of, like, your efficiency for your heating is terrible because of the windows, I would say if you're going to invest in something, absolutely, because buyers expect the big things to be in working order in the house. They're buying a house because it's a well-equipped home. So things like your roof, your furnace, your air conditioner, your hot water tank, those kinds of things are important to be in good working order, because as soon as the buyer moves in, they're going to need to be using and utilizing those things. So they need to be working. If they're not working, then you either have to be prepared to either say, we are well aware that we need a new furnace, so we've reduced the price to accommodate that, or we're willing to negotiate the price to accommodate that. So sometimes you can say, we've taken into consideration what needs to be done and we've reflected that in the listing price. Or you can say, we're willing to negotiate because we know that these certain things need to be done. Another thing that I would highly recommend, it's not necessary, but a pre-home inspection, a pre-list home inspection. And the reason why I say that is because it is information for you, but it's also information for the buyers. And you don't actually need to disclose the fact that you did a home inspection if there's a whole bunch of things wrong. It at least gives you the opportunity to, number one, know about the things that might be wrong. And number two, it gives you an opportunity to fix the things that are wrong. So there are no surprises when a buyer is coming through the home and bringing their own home inspector through. That's one thing that you risk when you don't get a home inspection done first and you let the buyer do their home inspection. You don't know necessarily who their home inspector is. It could be Uncle John, who says, I know everything about homes. I've owned my own home and built my own homes for the last 50 years. He may not be a certified home inspector. And so he may say, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. And that may not even be correct. At least when I have my sellers do a pre-list home inspection, I'm using the home inspectors that I've used for 10 plus years that I know and trust, and they are very knowledgeable. And so I know that these things are going to be accurate. So it's better to know ahead of time so you can actually put the fires out before the buyer even starts the fire by saying all these things are wrong. It's easier for you to know, okay, these things, I can fix these things. And then during an offer process, this isn't going to give them negotiating power because we're going to have these things fixed. You can still offer to show the buyers the home inspection. You can still offer it as transparency, but you can point out all of the things that you have rectified. So maybe there was knob and tube in the house and you had no idea, but you had it all professionally removed. All you have to do in the home inspection is point out, hey, look, during the home inspection, they uncovered that there was knob and tube in the house. We've had it professionally removed. Here is the invoice. Here's the receipt, the proof of us doing that. So then all the things just cancel each other out. If there's things that need to be rectified and you rectify those things, then it can put people at ease and then they feel better about knowing that they were dealt with. So that is one good thing to do. Now it is a cost, but it's peace of mind at the same time. So it's just, do you want a smooth selling process, or do you want like major potholes and bumps along the way? I always say that this was what helps us have a smoother transition from being for sale to being sold. I don't know why I'm losing my voice today. Okay. Do I need to stage my home or is it optional? Oftentimes, staging does make your house look beautiful. It is very expensive. It can potentially add a ton of value to your home. Case by case scenario, everybody's different. Oftentimes, I'm able to go through somebody's home and say, these are the things that I would get rid of. These are the things I would keep. And then we can make rearrangements. We can rearrange this stuff throughout the house to make it look more staged. I'm not against staging. I think it's great. But I'm also smart when it comes to spending money. And if I don't see a return on the investment, I'm not going to encourage it. And like I said, staging is very expensive. So there's been times where I've staged half a house and it's cost $7,500. It's very expensive. And oftentimes people think this should be the realtor's responsibility. I do have commission packages that do include staging in certain circumstances, but oftentimes I have the conversation with the seller and I say, this is your home, that it's your responsibility to have it ready to go. I'm here to help facilitate how it's presented and how it looks and everything. But at the end of the day, it's not my responsibility. Lots of people would not agree with that. And they think you get paid so much money, you should be able to do those things. But there's a time and a place for staging with each property. So I would say that a case by case basis for sure. It is not necessary though. You certainly can sell your house without it being staged. Professional photography, using the things that you already have in different ways and creative ways is also beneficial to you. What should I know if I'm selling and buying at the same time? This is a tricky one because it's hard to know which one to do first. Oftentimes, I ask a lot of questions about the financial situation that you're in. Many, if not most, people are not in a financial position to be able to buy first and then sell. Some people are in that position, and oftentimes, like if you're looking for something specific, that can be very beneficial, because if you find the diamond in the rough that you're looking for and you're able to jump at it, then absolutely, that's amazing. But if you're not in that position, and say you are not in a financial position to be able to, say, bridge finance, which is a thing, but then you're paying for 2 mortgages, and how long can you really do that for comfortably? I never like putting anybody in that scenario because it becomes very costly. And it also doesn't help you in the selling process, because then you become desperate then you become stressed, and it becomes very stressful when you've already secured a house and you still have your other house for sale, because then it forces you to be more open and willing to negotiate. It forces you to sometimes have to make price adjustments that you really might not want to make. Whereas on the flip side, if you just sell for what you want and you don't really have that pressure, it makes it a little bit easier in that case. But again, case by case basis, your financial situation plays a huge role in that and whether or not it makes sense to do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about marketing. What marketing actually makes sense right now? So when you are hiring a real estate agent, you need to ask them what their marketing plan is, because this market is very different than the COVID market. I could put a sign on the lawn at 8 a.m. and I could be putting a sold sign on at 10 p.m. during COVID. That is not the case anymore. The agents that have a marketing plan are the ones that you want to hire because they know how to package and market your property to those who are likely to buy it. So this is a very important element right now to the selling process. Your agent needs to be active on social media, YouTube, social platforms. They need to be running ads, because just hiring an agent and having them throw it up on MLS is just not enough in this market. You need to have them promoting it, whether they are just doing videos and reels and stories, or whether they're running paid advertisements through Facebook. They need to have a marketing plan. It definitely needs that to be able to sell quick and for top dollar in this market. Do professional photos and video really make a difference? I truly believe that professional photography should be a standard. It should be an absolute must, because pictures that are taken of a home with your cell phone is not professional. And I cringe every single time I see listing photos with a cell phone that's like $1 million home. I've seen this so many times. I want to call the person who owns the home to say, what were you thinking? Then there's the picture of the agent doing this in the bathroom mirror. That is like priceless. I see it so often and I wonder, what on earth are you thinking? But professional photos are an absolute must. I used to think that I could do my own photos. Then I very quickly learned that nope, I do not have the skill and the talent to do this. I also invest in the floor plans and the eye guides, the virtual tours, because I think that it gives the potential buyer the closest in-person experience without actually physically going to the house. And as a seller, you often will get stressed out when there's lots of showings and you're going to have to clean the house or tidy the house every single time that there's showings booked, and that stuff causes stress. So if as an agent I can try and alleviate buyers who just need to come and take a quick look at and see what the layout is, if I have provided the layout, if I've provided the floor plans, if I have provided the virtual tours, then they, after seeing that, they should be a very serious buyer if they book a showing to come and see the property, because they basically know exactly how it's laid out. They can literally walk through the house. So there should be no complaints saying, oh, but the master bedroom is so small. No, you had the measurements of each room. So there's no excuse to say this room is very small. All the measurements of every single room are provided. The virtual tour is provided. So I try and make it so that the people that are coming to see your house are very serious. They understand the layout. They know, that they are interested in your house, and it's not a waste of time for you cleaning and tidying, and it's not a waste of time for the buyer either. Now, I understand the house isn't going to be for everyone that comes through the house, but it can give them a really good idea prior to actually coming and seeing the house. Another question is, what is the difference between a conditional offer and a firm offer? So the difference is one means your house is sold and one means your house is almost sold. Conditional offer means the buyer has put conditions in place to safeguard them while they do their due diligence. So if a buyer brings you an offer, you guys agree on a price, and the buyer has some conditions in there. They may have a financing condition, which is standard, by the way. Even if they do have their pre-approval in place, oftentimes, every time, the buyer or the lender has to approve that house specifically. So oftentimes you will be required, not every time, but sometimes there needs to be an appraisal done. So that financing condition is very important to most buyers. And then, for example, if there is no home inspection that you've already done as the home seller, then the buyer may want to do their own home inspection. Now, there will be a time frame put in place for these conditions. So it will likely say these conditions are due no later than 5 business days following the acceptance of this offer, or 10 days. Now, if a buyer is asking for 14 plus days to do their conditions, get your agent to negotiate that down to 10 or 7 or something. Usually that's pretty long. So I get it that some properties may be unique and may need a little bit more time if they're looking into zoning or something like that. But yeah, it's really important that you understand that this conditional period is a certain amount of time. And in that certain amount of time, if they decide, or the bank decides that, nope, we are not going to approve this home, we're not going to give you the money for this home, then that gives the buyer an opportunity to say to you, the seller, look, the buyer or the bank did not accept our financing. We're going to have to step away. At that point, they have already provided their deposit, but they will receive that deposit back because it was within that conditional time frame. Now, very seldom does this happen anymore, but when you have an offer that comes in with no conditions, it's always the perfect recipe for anybody who wants to sell their home, because then they don't have to wait. They're literally, you get given an offer that says it's firm. If you sign on the dotted line, it's sold. Oftentimes people will use a firm offer as leverage to try and get you to get the price down significantly. Oftentimes I try to tell my clients, you know what, conditional offers are still okay, and we can still sell this house. Just because it's a firm offer, it excites sellers because they're like, if I sign this, we're sold. So you want to make sure that you're making the right decision in the heat of that moment. But in terms of an offer being firm, that means if you sign and accept that offer, your house is sold. And oftentimes when that conditional period is over, and the buyers have fulfilled those conditions, the bank has said, yep, we're going to give you the funding for this house. The inspection checks out, insurance is good, whatever conditions that they had in place, they all get fulfilled. Then your offer then goes into the firm mode, where you are officially sold essentially, and then you just are waiting for that closing date to come. So that's the difference between conditional and sold. But one of the big questions is, can buyers still walk away after an accepted offer? So we did just go through that in regards to the conditional period. So yes, if they are within their conditional period, they can walk away. They don't have to give you an explanation. They can tell you that the bank said no, the inspection was not good. Now, if the inspection was not good and they were unhappy with that, you can see if they're willing to elaborate on that and tell you why. Another thing that you can do that I have done several times, if we don't have a home inspection on file and the buyer does their own home inspection, and that home inspector is somebody that I know and trust, I oftentimes will ask if I can purchase that home inspection from the buyer, because if they're walking away and they don't want the house, they've just spent $600 on a home inspection. So oftentimes I will go to the buyer's agent and say, are they willing to sell this to us? That way we have information, and then we can take that information at a discount Don't be paying full price for it, because then you could just go get your own home inspection. So oftentimes I will say, we'll split you on it. That way they're getting some of their money back. That's where my master negotiating skills come in. But it's just good information to have. And like I said, I don't do that if I don't know the home inspector, but it's very good to be able to do that if you get an opportunity to do that, so that you can have the answers and understand like what was wrong with the house. And then, so if you're in the firm period where they have fulfilled their conditions, everybody is signed on the dotted line and the offer is firm, they technically are not supposed to walk away. In that case, they do lose their deposit. So if they had a $25,000 deposit in trust, then they lose that if they walk away. If they do not close, this happened a lot during COVID, believe it or not. And it was a lot of Toronto people coming, and then they would just come and purchase the house. Obviously didn't close on it, but would not close on the closing day, just crazy stuff. So that's why our region is a little bit deposit hungry, in the sense that we want healthy deposits when we're accepting an offer, unless it's maybe a local person and we can vet that from the agent that we're working with. But we want a good, healthy deposit, because we don't want any problems come closing. We don't want them to just decide that they're not going to close. And then if they only have a $2,500 deposit or a $5,000 deposit, for some people, that's just pocket change and no big deal. Whereas for the seller, it could be like a life altering situation. If they've already purchased another home and now they can't purchase that home because this sale didn't go through, it can get very messy in that case. Okay, so let's just talk quickly about the inspection. I know we've talked quite a bit about inspections already, but I'll just note this. An inspection report is not a pass or a fail. It is a report of information on the house, things that might be of concern and things that are good. So home inspectors have all the boxes that they need to check, that they need to test and check and all those things. And then at the end of it, they compile a report to put together as an information resource on the house. So it's not a pass or a fail situation. It's more of here's the information about this house, and here's what might be of concern that you might want to look a little bit deeper into. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if somebody walks away, it doesn't mean like it failed. It just means that maybe there's things that they just cannot financially support. Maybe the roof needs to be replaced, and that's going to be 10 or 15 or 20 grand. And maybe also the furnace needs to be replaced, and that's just too much financially for them to handle. And that therefore they're walking away. So that could be part of the inspection situation. What are the most common reasons deals fall apart? So I'm going to talk in the conditional period. So oftentimes the deal will fall apart over silly things. Oftentimes it's not just silly, but it's serious things where like we've uncovered some major issues in the home and we just are not financially able to support those deficiencies, which we just talked about, but also when the seller is not willing to negotiate. So as a buying agent for a moment, if there's some issues in the home inspection, we would then go back to the selling agent and say, look, here's a list of the issues that we uncovered. This is approximately what the cost is going to be to do those things or fix those things. We want to negotiate the price down so that we can so you can compensate for what this is going to cost. And usually it just comes down to a back and forth negotiating thing, or maybe there's a closing date issue or whatever. 9 times out of 10, or maybe 7 times out of 10, it comes down to the price and whether you can negotiate mutually on a price that makes everybody happy. So that's one major thing that why deals fall apart. What if you don't get offers right away? You have to go on the market to know how the market is going to respond. And you're not going to know until you're on the market. You may not get offers right away. We're not in COVID times. So you can't expect that you're going to have 7 offers on the table by the end of the day one. Things are a little bit different now. And so That is why the pre-list preparation and the coming soon marketing, which I do, and I think lots of agents try to do, not every agent does it, but getting agents to be aware of the listing before it goes on to the market, making sure that your database knows about the listing before it hits the market. There is a lot of coming soon work that needs to be done from the realtor's perspective to help build that momentum and then to help build the interest of the property. That's always ideal situation, is in the first week or two you do get an offer, and that's always what we try to do. But oftentimes you probably won't get an offer right away unless you're in a position where you've priced it extremely competitively and people are going to fight over it, which in this market, it does still happen because people still have that mentality that if we list low, we'll sell in multiples for X amount. Oftentimes that does blow up in their face and it doesn't always work out that way, but it is what some people think is a good idea. Okay. So don't expect offers on the first day, first week. It's great if you do. But so how do we adjust the strategy if the home isn't selling? This is a big thing because you need to be able to pivot and adjust very quickly if the house is not selling. If you are not getting inquiries, if you are not getting showings, that's not a good sign. That means you're a little bit out in left field in terms of your price, and you probably need to make some adjustments very quickly. The reason why I say quickly is because you want to sell your house in a decent amount of time. You do not want to prolong the selling process and drag it out to 6 months because that just does not look good for your home. I would recommend that you don't go any longer than 21 days. So 3 weeks at X price. And then if you're not getting showings, not getting inquiries, nothing, it's just crickets, it's time to make an adjustment. And my theory with making price adjustments is it needs to be a fairly significant price adjustment. Because if it was a little bit close, you'd still be getting showings. And then you'd be getting feedback from people saying the price just is too high. That is valuable information for you as a seller to be able to take and use to figure out where do we need to be for our price. So that's a really important thing. If you're going to incrementally make price reductions by $2,500 or $5,000, don't even do it. Wait until you're ready to make a $25,000 price reduction and do that. Because when you're doing these little incremental ones, it starts to make you look very desperate to sell your house. And then buyers just sit and wait because we know in another week they're going to take it down another 5,000 and then they call it and then they're like, nobody's bought it yet. We'll wait another week and it'll go down again. No, it just makes sense to do one strong, healthy adjustment so that you can reach a new bracket of buyers. Oftentimes buyers have their caps. 525 is our max. And if you're at 550 and you decide to go down to 525, now you've got all those buyers who have that max budget. Now you're including them as potential buyers. So that's always a good strategy to have, is to make price adjustments big enough that it's going to create momentum and it's going to create some more activity for you. I've not been asked any questions while I've been talking away here. So I'm going to, in the comments, I don't even know if you guys will see this if I do put it in the comments, but I'm going to put some resources in the comments for you. There's listready.ca, which is the seller experience resources. Inside of that seller experience, you're going to see a roadmap of the selling process. So it just gives you an idea of what does the selling process look like and how does it start. There's a seller intake form there. So if you are ready to sit down and have a conversation with me about selling your home, that's something that I require to have done before we meet so that I can review all of that information and then we can have a well-educated conversation at that point. There's also a home enhancement checklist there. So you can take that, you can download it and print it. It's going to help you be able to make enhancements to your home. There's also the List Ready guide, which is a guide that I put together. different price points of different things that you can do. There's things that you can do to help improve the value of your home that's free, that just costs sweat equity and your time and energy. There's things that cost between, say, $500 and $1,000, and then there's the bigger ticket items that you can consider. If you've got a certain amount of money that you want to spend, you can look at the list ready guide and go, you know what, maybe it would be a good idea to put a brand new garage door on, because ours looks awful. And from a curb appeal standpoint and from photos, it's going to look really good and be maybe an eye catcher for potential buyers. And maybe that'll be something that we can get a return on our investment on. There's also an app in there called Borrow that gives you credit monitoring. So it's like the ones that are available through your banking, but this allows you to check it all the time. And it lets you know, like, when you're starting to overstretch what your available credit is and those kinds of things. So it does help you with trying to monitor your credit and keep everything in check. Because when if you're selling and buying, that your credit scores need to still be good. You can't just jump from one house to the other with crappy credit. You've got to keep your credit in check. So keeping an eye on that is really important. And so the link for Borrow is down there too. And then there's also the Canadian Mortgage app, which you can play around with and just see if you're thinking about selling and moving up or maybe downsizing. You can play with different scenarios there to see potentially your money situation and your finances and that kind of thing. But there is some resource links down there. I also did put in my VIP Plus Club program link down there, which is vipme.ca. A ton of great discounts and deals available to you. Food discounts, hotels, sports tickets, a bunch of just awesome discounts and deals. Dulux paints, a bunch. The Brick. Anyways, go check it out. Register. It's absolutely free. You do not have to pay to be part of this program. It's just something that I invest in that I think is worth investing in so that you guys can benefit from those discounts and deals. I get no kickbacks when you use the deals. It's just something that I think is great to have. So anyways, if you guys ever have questions, my phone number is right here. Send me a text, give me a call. If I don't answer, I will call you back. I promise. And if you text me, I will text you back. If you've got questions anytime, feel free to reach out. I will be doing this type of live event once a month on the first Friday. Buyers are the first Wednesday of the month. Sellers are the first Friday of the month, both at 7 p.m., both live. So if you've got questions, hop on live, ask your questions, get your answers, and subscribe, all those fun things. Follow me, whatever. I'm just here to help, and I love my job, and I want to make sure that you're making great real estate decisions. So take care. We'll talk to you soon.